when you're going on a podcast, whether it's a marketing podcast, it's an e-commerce podcast, what you're doing by getting on a show like this is you're associating your expertise with that focus. When you go on a podcast, the goal is to educate people. Like you shouldn't be trying to sell people on a podcast. When you think about like brand reputation, you want to go more for like the editorial stuff. If you're going for paid, you're associating your brand with like pay to play.
What one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
Don't wait until you do it. Just jump into the deep end and then just like climb your way from there.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Show. I'm your host, Athin Cassiotis, and today I have a powerful guest. His name is Zachary Bernard. He is the founder of We Feature You PR, a public relations company that helps individuals and businesses establish themselves as thought leaders through press, podcast, and TV appearances. And since its inception, We Feature You PR has worked with 400 plus clients, from solopreneurs to publicly traded companies, securing features in major publications like Forbes, Entrepreneur, and USA Today. And known for his strategic approach to media, Zachary has been featured in outlets like Entrepreneur, Business Insider, and Yahoo Finance, and various podcasts, demonstrating his expertise in leveraging media platforms to drive visibility and growth for his clients. Welcome, Zachary, and thank you for being on the Business Growth Show.
No, thank you so much. I was really looking forward to this. So thank you for this amazing introduction. It was great.
Yeah, you're welcome, mate. Awesome to have you here. I'm sure it's going to be a very impactful episode for everyone watching and listening today. And you are a successful entrepreneur. So yeah, for those people who don't know who you are, please introduce yourself by telling us a little bit more about you and your journey.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, my name is Zachary Bernard. I'm the founder of We Feature PR. We are a podcasting and PR company. We launched back in 21. We're actually going on our 50th year anniversary in May. So it's been almost like half a decade. I'm getting old at this point. But I would say I've started my entrepreneur journey, definitely been a while, probably 13 years old on the corner lemonade stand, $1, $2, just getting out used to it with the entrepreneurship side of things. And I would say as I got like a little bit older, not very old to put it really simply and be honest with you, I'm not 40 or anything, but as I started getting to the journey more like the online side of things, I started learning that you could make money online. And that kind of fascinated me, where I started selling things on like eBay here and here. And then I realized like, why could I not like learn something and like be able to offer that expertise to people? That led me to the rabbit hole of like automation, like building systems, operations, and all that fun stuff. I launched like an automation agency. I think we literally had like one client. It was like an e-commerce like company, like an e-commerce store, if I recall correctly. And they needed help like automating like all these little things. And I was like, you know what? I mean, like I'll do it. And I started doing that, got used to like working with clients, providing that service. And soon enough, I would say I've realized that like automations are great. Like they like what we do, but I'm not seeing like an immense like impact or anything like that. Like it's saving them time, which is really great. I feel that time freedom is a big one. I know you're big on that too. So I wanted to be able to create something that would help people. And usually marketing falls into growing a business. And I kind of fell into the rabbit hole of what is marketing. And within one of those subcategories, I fell into PR, which is just getting press. We focus more on like the getting articles in the press. I know you talked about this earlier when you gave this amazing introduction. But when I was running the automation agency, I was like, hey, let's just try to like reach out to a couple journalists, see if I can get an article out there, see if I can get a proof of concept. Yeah, believe it or not, I got a couple articles in some publications. It was like, this is interesting. I can probably do this as a service for people and offer it as like a way of expertise. And over time, we've pitched so many publications, built relationships with, I would say, around 1,000 maybe publication websites of like any vertical that you could think of. We've helped our clients get in all those publications you mentioned. And probably 2.5 years ago, I would say, we started seeing the shift into like podcasting. That's where we're on like right now, where people care more about people. They like to see video content. Like to be able to see the energy of a person versus just like a little quote post, like a blurb in an article, which can be great for SEO, having that little like as seen on banner. But most people want to be able to like build a brand, get content, SEO benefits, and podcasting somewhat like has those three into one. So again, we've taken that same PR approach, We've done it to the podcasting world. We've built relationships with 700 plus like podcast hosts, and we leverage those to get people booked on podcasts, and then we show them how to use them. Because believe it or not, if you just get on the podcast, you don't do anything with it, that's like 50% of the puzzle. The other 50% is actually using it. And then, yeah, we're in 2026. That's where we're at right now. We obviously have a lot more that we're having the works, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment. And that's my story in a nutshell, to put it simply.
Yeah, awesome, Zach, mate. Great story. And yeah, I started young as well, doing things when I was in my teenage years, selling VCD movies, CD burners back in the day, which a lot of kids wouldn't even know what they are.
Yeah.
And then awesome, yeah, that I think it's a really great story of going, I want to learn about something. Where's the need? Going out there, doing the
Yeah.
things that most people wouldn't do, and then going, wait a minute, I've got something out here, and then you've seen where markets are changing, and you've pivoted and added that, into your repertoire now in the podcasting. So I think it's a great
Mhm.
journey that you're on, and I love podcasting. Obviously, I've done a bit over 300 episodes now every week for
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
It's been a fun journey, and I think it is a very powerful method. So I'd love to hear it from your
Mhm.
perspective initially, about the benefits of podcasting as a key marketing channel.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure you understand that, so I don't have to explain it to you, but for your audience that obviously is not very too familiar with the concept, I mean, there's so many benefits to it, but I would say with podcasting, one of like the main ones is you're obviously getting a bunch of content by going on a podcast. Like, sure, you have the 45 minutes, it's a long form asset that's like evergreen, that's always going to be findable by anyone. But what you can do is you can repurpose that podcast into like little clips, audiogram, posts, quotes, all that stuff. And that like one podcast can essentially serve for your content for like the entire month, which sounds crazy, but in theory, it is true. I mean, I do it myself when I go on a podcast, like, hey, like, let's repurpose this. Let's get some bits, pieces of the show that are going to show expertise, are going to provide value. But in the end, when you go on a podcast, the goal is to educate people. Like you shouldn't be trying to sell people on a podcast on anything. I mean, I run my own podcast. I know how it is. You run your own show. I'm sure you get a lot of people sometimes that are going to be a little bit too salesy, and then you're like, maybe that's not like what we're looking for here. We want someone to come on the show and educate people. And I feel that's like very important at the end of the day. If I'm going to spend 45 minutes listening to someone, I want to get some sort of value out of it, which not everyone does. But that's like one component. Like content is a big one. Authority is like another thing that not everyone thinks about. But when you're going on a podcast, whether it's a marketing podcast, it's an e-commerce podcast. What you're doing by getting on a show like this is you're associating your expertise with that focus of like marketing, that focus of like e-commerce, and you're like helping to like elevate your profile. That's like number two. There's also the fact that you're getting SEO benefits. Maybe you'll get like a backlink that goes back to your website. People are going to find you easily. But the last one is you're obviously getting in front of new people, to put it very simply. If you're getting on podcasts, you're doing it correctly. You're not getting on Joe Schmuck's podcast that was launched yesterday in their basement. You're getting in front of people who want to be educated, that want to be given value. And one of the ways to do so is by getting on podcasts. And it's a very like low cost like effort. I'm sure that you've ran ads before, or you've probably worked with clients who have ran ads before. I mean, I know we have. I can tell you it can be very expensive if you run ads, but there's also like so many different channels that you can use, such as like podcasting, for example, speaking on stage. You can pitch yourself. You can get like PR by pitching yourself. And it's a more like time intensive method of advertising, but it can be just as effective if you do it correctly. But one of like the words I would describe PR podcasts as is an amplification, like amplifier. Because if you're just doing podcasts, that's amazing. But the main thing that it will do is it will amplify any of your other marketing efforts. So if I'm running Facebook ads, I'm doing outbound outreach, I'm sending cold emails, LinkedIn messages, or anything like that. Most of the people who have never heard of me before, what are they going to do? They're going to look me up. They're going to want to look at who I am, what I do, see if I actually know what I'm talking about in the first place before making a purchasing decision. And if we're able to influence that by showing them, like, yeah, like Mark here actually knows what he's talking about. He's been in all these places. He's a recognized expert on neuroscience. It's going to make it much easier for people to like buy in mentally and want to like work with this person. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but I would say there's like definitely like multiple little like layers of podcast guesting, but I would definitely see it as definitely like a channel that everyone should be doing in 2026. Even if you just do one podcast every quarter, you should definitely be doing podcasting. And I know with your 300 episodes, you know what I'm talking about here. So,
Yeah, definitely. There is so much benefits, and it's also, I think the stats are crazy, right? It's like most podcast
oh
hosts
yeah.
get to less than 20 episodes. I think it's 1% or something like
I
that,
think it's
right?
like eight actually. Like
Really?
it's crazy. It's nothing.
Full on, right? So, when you understand, and because the thing is that it's not directly monetizable, right? At the start, like you said, you're not
Yeah.
in here hard selling. You're here providing value,
Hmm.
right? Whether it's
Yeah.
you, your guests, whatever like that. But like anything, like business, there's a momentum effect, right? The longer you do something, you do it there. So when you
Hmm.
get to that 1, 2 years, etc., and you've been consistent, then different
Yeah.
opportunities come from that, right? So I think this is what people need to understand, and it's the delayed gratification, right? That's what it
Yeah.
is. A lot of people
Yeah.
want instant gratification, especially the younger people of today. I want it now. I want to make money now. It's like, no, because if you build something for the future, it's like Alex Hormozy. He
Hmm.
did $100 million, launch of his book. But
Yeah.
what he did for 3 to 4 years before that was posted like 100 pieces of content a week, right?
Yeah.
Before that to build to that point. No one talks about that, right? Like
Hmm.
how much work
Yeah.
was put in beforehand. So I think
Hmm.
this is the power, but that's I guess from the hosting side, which is a lot. But I think let's focus a little bit more on the being interviewed side, right? Because that's the easier
Yeah.
place for people to start with, rather than
Hmm.
creating their own podcast. So, what are some tips that you can give people if they're new, or maybe they've done a few
Yeah.
episodes of getting on podcasts? They're putting their
Hmm.
best foot forward to get themselves out there.
Yeah, and I would say like the advice I gave probably like applies like same concept as far as like podcast guesting. And I love what you mentioned about being like long-term like effort because there's a lot of people are gonna do like one, two, and then they're gonna like give up. But it's such a long-term effort where you have to take your time, you have to do it consistently. It's like if you're gonna put a little bit of a drop of water into like the bucket, you're gonna have to put a lot of them to make sure that it actually gets full. And a lot of people are gonna get to like a quarter of it and then they're gonna give up, saying it's not working. But if they took the time, they took the initiative to wait it out, they would actually see the impact here. But going on to like your point, like what should they do? I mean, it's a good question. Like you could obviously work with an expert, whether that's us or like anyone else. That's one of the ways to do it. You could do it yourself. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. If you wanted to just get on a couple podcasts, just get a feel like how it is, you could probably reach out to your network. I mean, let's be honest here. Everyone in like your network probably will have a podcast. So you're probably going to find 4 or 5 friends that have their podcast. It might be a soccer, football podcast. It probably isn't too relevant to them. So maybe those you disregard for the time being. But there's always people that are going to have their little podcasts. Go on them first, get some practice, get some like media experience, like media training if you haven't never done like speaking before. That's like the first thing I would recommend to you. And then afterwards, I would just try to like send like a couple of emails to like some podcasts. So it's like if you do it, don't go after the Joe Rogan. You will not get on the podcast. Fair warning. You want to make sure to go for the podcast that you would be qualified to go for, obviously, but make sure that it's not like a major podcast that will definitely not take you on because maybe you don't have a social media following. You can craft a very interesting story, but there is really like a couple things that we look when like anyone considers a podcast guest. I mean, I can tell you because I consider people from podcasts and I pitch them too. And what I like to call them is I call them leverage points. We take that into factor whenever we pitch anyone. But you want to look at any like value add that you can provide to a podcast. So a leverage point could be the fact that you've worked with some major company, like a Fortune 500 companies that everyone know. Like you can mention like, yeah, I directly work with Google directly, that's a credibility leverage point. Second, if you have a major social media following, let's say you have 100,000 Instagram followers, that's great, which means that if you go on the podcast, you reshare it, the podcast always gets more visibility for the podcast. That's a win-win. If you have a newsletter, that's another one too. Because if you share the podcast to your newsletter, that's 100,000 people that directly get an email promoting the podcast or promoting an episode. And then I would say if you've had like some major accomplishments, whether it's you've worked with 100,000 like I wouldn't say clients, maybe you've served 100,000 customers, any of like those little like KPIs, metrics that add like further validation or credibility to what you're doing are going to make your life so easier. Does it mean that you cannot get on podcasts if you don't have those? No. If you have an interesting story, you pitch it correctly, you make sure that it is relevant to the podcast, you can definitely land podcasts, like podcast bookings. I mean, I've seen people where we would start pitching them, they didn't even have a website or any social media. And we still got them booked on podcasts because they were just interesting. People were like, you know what, like, kind of curious. Like, I want to hear that. But just going back to like what you were asking the question as far as what you should do, I would just go ahead, try to find 20 podcasts within your niche that would help you get in front of your potential clients, but would also help you speak to a topic that you're an expert on. I would list down who those hosts are, try to find their contact email. Easiest way to do it is probably to use apollo.io. You can easily get a contact email from there, or you can literally just search Mark Jones email, and oftentimes it will show up if it's publicly available. You can use that and just like start building like an initial like podcast. So if like podcasts you would want to get on. Once you've built that initial list, what I would do is I would verify those emails because a lot of those emails won't even exist. And one mistake that I see a lot of people do is they're going to build an immense list of people that are like, okay, we're going to reach out to like 100, like 200 people. And then they come to realize that 50% of those emails don't even exist. And they've crafted all those pitches, done all the research, and then they hit the button and then the email bounces back and then they're like, I just spent a couple hours writing this pitch for nothing. So you want to like get ahead of that, verify those email. We like Million Verifier. It's like an email verification platform. But once you have all your data, everything is all set, you're ready to pitch. This is where you do want to do like a little bit of research. Whenever you pitch a podcast host, you want to look at the past guests they've had on, who they're talking about, what topics they're covering. Because if you're talking about finances, you're not going to go pitch a music podcast. There's no relevance. They're going to look at you and think you're crazy. So you want to make sure you pitch intentionally. And then once you have that list, you've crafted those pitches, this is where you send away. And then just like follow up like a couple times. Don't try to like follow up 20 times with the podcast host. If they have not gone back to you in the like third follow-up, they are probably not going to get back to you. And the other last step I would do is if they don't reply to the email, you can go and take an omni-channel approach. So maybe you reach out to them via LinkedIn, Instagram. Maybe they're a bit more active there. And then if they don't reply on any of those channels, I'd probably leave it there. They're probably not going to get back to you. But in my experience, if you did all those steps, you took the initiative, you did the research, you will get some podcast bookings out of it. Are they going to be the best podcasts since that you're just starting out? Maybe you haven't gone podcasts yet. Probably not, but it will be a stepping stone for you to learn how to do it, get some like a general introduction to like the podcasting world. And it's better than nothing. So I would definitely recommend anyone to go that route if they're trying to get their feet in the water like really quickly here.
Yeah, now awesome points there. And yeah, what I'll say to people is that, you know, if you're early on in this game, like both of us, we didn't just speak great on podcasts when we first started, right? Or doing content. You've got to build the muscle, right? Like going to the gym. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it's a great point about going to your network first, because it's people that you trust, they'll have
Yeah.
you on there, you build some confidence. And then, you know, that will help you when you get on, you know, other podcasts of the people that you don't know. So I think it's a lot of great points
Mhm.
there. And, you know, and from my side, right, as the host here, because
Yeah.
I get multiple emails daily now, right? So this is the benefits
Oh
of
yeah.
being, you know, on a big podcast, there
Yeah.
of receiving it, but it's actually too much. That's the problem, right?
I know.
So if I can't say yes to everybody, right? So unfortunately,
Yeah,
it's like, you know, I don't reply to a lot of people. So,
of course.
you know, so just to give you the perspective from my, it's like, you know, we're not just like shutting you down necessarily if you're reaching out to people. It's good that there could be a lot of, you know, things that happen.
Oh, oh
So
yeah.
yeah. So I liked your
Mhm.
approach there of what you said around try an omni approach and like go to the social media or other things, because emails, people get a lot of emails, it can get missed. But
Oh
if you
yeah.
can try different ways, I think that was a very
Mhm.
powerful one there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and like one thing to add to that, I mean, I want to use an example. I literally just read about that literally before we got on a call, but it was talking about when you're sending like cold email outbound, for example, a good way to get your email to be read is to call the person. Even if they don't answer, that will help them to go read your email because they're reminded to go have a look at it. And what we've noticed is when you take that omni-channel approach, oftentimes those people you reached out on LinkedIn, they're just going to reply like, "Oh, I didn't get the email. I didn't see it." And then you can bump it up and it just serves as like a little notification on your phone to like, "Hey, go check that out again." and it works like very well. Increases reply rate, booking rate, and yeah, I definitely recommend everyone to do that.
Yeah, awesome, man. Love it. So obviously we're getting out there. You know, make sure you have a half decent microphone is probably what I would say as well, as you would say too, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
good lighting too, is
yeah.
important these days for content. But let's say that, we've got that, we've gotten on a few podcasts now, and then we want to take it to the next level, right? And maybe now we're going, okay, let's host our own podcast, right? For the people
Hmm.
that are listening now. So, yeah, what tips can you give to people that are starting out to have a successful podcast and, to stay consistent, like we were talking about, for the long
Yeah.
term benefits?
I should be asking you. You've been posting more episodes than I've published. I've been more like the other side of like the mic, getting on podcasts and getting other people on the mic. But I would say, yeah, consistency is like the biggest thing where everyone struggles with it. What I would do is I would keep yourself accountable. And the way to do it is make sure that you get people booked on your calendar. So then you have this forced commitment that you have to record the podcast. So if you're starting it, the best way to start it off is try to get as many episodes in the pipeline as possible when you do it. So for example, when I try to like get anyone on my podcast, I'm like, hey, like I want to do some more episode, I want to get some more content. I'm gonna have our team prepare an email outreach campaign. We're gonna reach out to some people. We're gonna send maybe 100 email, and then we'll book like 10, like 15 people in the podcast. And then I'm like, okay, so now I got my next like couple of weeks like booked out. I have to publish these episodes because after I record them, I made this commitment to this person. I took my time to record it, like I have to publish it. And then like you just have to do it. Like it's a commitment that you've made to that other person, but that's going to help with the consistency. But again, growing a podcast is not just about the consistency itself. It's also about being like a bit strategic. And what I mean by strategic is you can pronounce your podcast, you can use the like your network, maybe not your network, your social media following to be able to grow your audience and everything like that. But another strategic approach that you can take is you can reach out to people who are in your industry, who already have a following, and you can invite them on the podcast. So then they reshare it. For example, I had like one of the founder of Agile. It's like a project management framework. I think a lot of people at Amazon and everything use it. I think he had like 100,000 like connections, or not connections, followers on LinkedIn. And I was like, I should invite him. Looks like a very interesting guy. I think he was in like his 70s or anything like that. But I learned a lot and I was able to like leverage the fact that he has like this major audience. And I think that was like one of our most seen episode. So if you can take that strategic approach, figure out exactly the type of people who could bring more listeners to your audience, that's one way of doing it. And I know I talked about leverage points earlier, that if you have a big social media following, if you have a newsletter, same concept applies when you're trying to like source guests. And obviously, you're making this like a win-win for them because you're going to be producing content from their podcast. You're giving them a platform to share more of their insights. And a lot of people would feel stupid not saying yes to that. I mean, if they don't charge you nothing, obviously, I know a lot of people are gonna bait and switch you and then try to charge you like a couple grand to get on the podcast. I don't like that, but I know some people do it. But I would say that's like the best way to start. And if you can keep yourself accountable, keep going, and after you get that cadence, like can't we publish one every single week? People are going to start expecting they're going to be publishing a podcast that following week, and then you're going to feel that you're a failure if you don't publish that following week. So you're like creating this like artificial like accountability in a way, which I think is pretty important for everyone posting podcasts at least.
Yeah, no, awesome points, man. And I'll definitely confirm that, like you said, booking in a lot at the start, like before you
Yeah.
launch, like just getting a lot in the bank, so to speak, so that you don't have to necessarily record every week is a big one. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and it's actually easy to interview people, right? Like I think the podcasts that
Yeah.
fall over are the ones that are just on their own the whole time because you've got to create a lot of
Oh yeah.
content. Whereas if you're interviewing someone, you just got to ask great questions, and that comes, you get better with time over that.
Yeah.
So reaching out to people, and then and what I do is as well is like I went overseas for 8 weeks.
Okay.
Sort of a working holiday. I was still working to an extent, but I wasn't recording.
Yeah.
So I made sure I had like 13 episodes in the bank before I left, and my
Nah, smart.
VA was posting it every week.
Yeah.
Everything like that was still happening. So, I stayed consistent. And then when I got back, I started recording again. So I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing because and and I'll confirm like it's going to take at least 1-2 years to get momentum where people are going, okay, you're not
Oh
just a flash in the pan, so to speak, of someone
yeah.
starting. You're actually committed
Yeah.
to it, and then a lot of opportunities come from that. And let's talk
Mm.
opportunities now, right? Because you've worked with a lot of people, right? From being
Mm.
a podcast guest, also being host, whichever way.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that have happened? Because I could talk about mine, but I'd love to know from your perspective, either you specifically or your clients, of the
Yeah.
benefits of what's being created, from a business perspective from being on
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously two sides to like look at it. So I'll just really quickly go over like the hosting, and then I can touch on to like you being interviewed on podcasts. But I would say hosting podcasts, I mean, I've had multiple people I would speak with, have a great conversation, and it's like, do you want to get on more podcasts? Like you crushed this. Like I think you'd be amazing. And we've had a lot of people say like, yeah, like I'm actually looking to be on more podcasts. And that ends up being like one way where we can get more clients out of doing that. And that's like something a lot of people will do with their own podcasts is they'll be able to use it more as a like a biz dev tool where you have great conversation with people, you network with people, you build relationships, and maybe in 2, 3 weeks, a couple months later, you're like, hey, I remember Joe. He was really good at that when I went on his podcast when we talked about this. Maybe I work with them. So I would say that's like one tool. I mean, we've obviously had clients from like hosting your own podcast. We do produce podcasts for clients too, like not like too heavily. We do it for a couple clients. And I mean, I have like this one client that does like in-person podcasts. Those look like really great. It's like a Joe Rogan type style when he runs them. And he's been able to like we've invited people that he's already worked with, and he's been able to use it as like a reactivation tool, like a reactivate the conversations. Like, hey, like what how's everything going? And then just being able to like support them if they need like any additional help. And that's been like one of the ways that he's been able to like generate like direct like tangible results out of that. So that's more like the production aspect of things. But as you grow like a bigger podcast, then there's going to come like more opportunities where people might want to sponsor your podcast. They might want to pay a little money to have like a read on or be a guest on the show, like sponsor the entire episode and anything like that. That's one way to like monetize your podcast. To be able to get to that, you obviously need to build a good audience. You need to be consistent. If you're not consistent, you're not going to get to the sponsored side of things and be able to charge to run ads on your podcast or anything like that. So that's more like the hosting production side of things. And I would say getting on podcasts, it definitely like varies because I've had clients, for example, one good client, which I thought that was like probably like one of the most interesting things that happened. But he runs like an insurance agency, and then you can have like a franchise that he started selling as like a model. And I remember speaking to him, and he was like, "Yeah, like I was speaking to like this one couple. They said they saw me on the podcast. They did more research. They saw all these pieces of content I was posting on my LinkedIn. They saw that I actually knew what I was talking about, and they ended up like work with us for like buying into like a franchise. I think you mentioned it was like $50,000, but that was like the small thing. The biggest thing was with a franchise, I forgot like what the actual term is, but residual or something like that, where over the next 10 years, it's gonna be like a 6, 7 figure like partnership just out of doing that. And the one thing I'd like to mention, because I know we talked about like the long-term aspect of things. He didn't just get on podcasts for a month. He did it for, I think it was like around like 8, 10 months. That's where like he started seeing like people like, hey, say on this podcast. Like I thought that was interesting. So the compound effect is definitely real. You have to obviously be mindful of that. Yeah, that's one example. We've had a lot of clients get speaking engagements too. I mean, that's like one thing I see. If you're going to be speaking to a podcast host, they're probably connected. They probably do conferences and all that fun stuff. And sometimes they'll invite you to come and speak at the conference if you're an interesting guest. If you're not, they're probably not going to invite you. So make sure that you are an interesting guest. And another thing, I probably like the last one because I feel like I rambled on for a little bit there. But sometimes just creating connections with podcast hosts. I mean, I've had clients who are going to connect, they're going to build a really great relationship, and then it's like, yeah, I think it could actually like help us. Can we talk next week? And I've seen that happen like so many times. I would say those are like most of the things we've personally been able to like document. But I can tell you, we probably had like some other things that have happened that we are not even aware of, which I feel is probably an issue on our part. We probably should be tracking that better, but it happens.
Yeah, awesome, man. Nah, it's all awesome points there, and yeah, I'll confirm all of that. Right, it happens over a period of time, and you
Oh
never
yeah.
know what's going to happen. Like for me, like there's been like similar to what you said, I've gotten clients because people have seen the videos that they've already, been pre-warmed up, and then they've reached out and said, hey,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to work with you. That's like simple ones. But the,
Mhm.
the, the bigger ones is like partnerships and things that have come from that,
Oh
and
yeah.
I've done a multiple $1 million deal, with someone in the
Nice.
US, among other places in the world. And this is coming from many years doing it, right? Like doing the podcast and
Yeah.
going, how can I create something here? So, like you said, it's being strategic, right? Like, when you're going in there, going, what else can we
Mhm.
do from here that it's a win-win, for everybody. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just for me, it was both sides on that there. So everybody wins. So I think about that of how you can add value, to
Yeah.
somebody else, and go from there and create opportunities for yourself. So I think they're all awesome points, right? And definitely big advocate of it, of course, of getting on there. So just do it, right? Don't worry
Just
about
do it.
how good you are or whatever. That comes with time, and
Yeah.
you'll be good. So awesome, man. Well, let's talk a little bit more around the PR side here, right? I know
Sure.
podcasting's a big one now. We've talked a lot about that. Um,
Mhm.
Obviously, press is another one, right? That you've touched on here. So getting into articles and these
Yeah.
big things, like what's the benefits of getting into these publications?
Yeah, I would say most people, when you look at like press, PR, or anything like that, they use it or look at it as a way to build more authority. Like if you go on like a big speaker's website, like their personal website, you scroll down a little bit, you'll typically see like the as seen on Forbes, Entrepreneur, Inc., and everything, and then directly you like see them as like an expert. Like directly you associate them with being like a thought leader in the space. That's usually like what I see for like most people where they're gonna look at it to like build their own brand, personal brand, company brand. That's like one of the components. There's also the fact that a lot of these publications, they're gonna have a like a high DA, which is like the domain authority of their website. And then if you get published on there, they add a link back to your website, it's gonna help boost your ranking in like SEO. So we've worked with so many people where they're like, I literally just want links in the article. I don't care to have my face on there. Like I literally just want this for SEO. I mean, we have like a company that they work with like cannabis brands for like dispensaries or something like that, which is a pretty tough industry in my experience, get articles and everything. But just getting links for them, they're like, yeah, that's literally all we want. So a lot of people will do it simply for links. A lot of people are going to do it more for like the added having like the banner on like your website. And I would say, but with PR, there's like two types of like PR coverage. There's going to be editorials, which are published by a writer, a staff. It's basically like organic, like no one paid for it. And then you're going to have advertorials, which typically you're going to be paying the publication, their group, marketing group, or anything like that. And then it's going to say like sponsored content or anything like that. A lot of brands, if they are selling a physical product or anything, they are typically going to go for the advertorial route to be able to like try to sell their product directly. That's one way of doing it. But I typically recommend going more for the editorial route. You can do both if you're really just looking for the name association. It doesn't really matter. You could do an advertorial, you could do an editorial. Editorial, you need to pitch people. You need to pitch a journalist, a writer, contributor, author, anything like that. So it's more time intensive. And in advertorials, you just have to pull out your wallet and then just pay them to get on it. Anytime that we work with clients, we've definitely done both because some clients are like, hey, we literally just want the logo. We built relationship with them. So sometimes we'll have like a bulk discount. So we can do like a lot of articles with them for a discounted price. And then sometimes the client's like, hey, we don't want none of that paid stuff. Like we want it organic, we want earned media. It's like, okay, so we're gonna shift the strategy, make sure we're getting you some earned coverage. And oftentimes, when you think about like brand reputation, you want to go more for like the editorial stuff. If you're going for paid, you're associating your brand with like pay to play. And a lot of people don't really like that, which I can understand. You want to be known for someone that actually earned what they got as opposed to just paid for it. So yeah, it's a very important component that I think a lot of people should know. If you're considering getting PR, be mindful of where you're getting, what that association will do, and make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into at the end of the day.
Yeah, awesome, man. Love it. Definitely very powerful on that press side. And one other thing I saw was also TV appearances, right? That is part of this.
Yeah.
So tell us more about this because I think a lot of people would like to be on TV or a different element, right, of authority and being able to reach
Yeah.
audiences. So tell us more about the benefits and how we can get
Yeah.
on TV. Yeah.
We've definitely done like a lot less like TV stuff, like PR, podcast. That definitely hasn't been our main focus. But for TV, it's usually going to be more like local, like TV stations. When you're thinking about like the national, like the Bloomberg, the Business Insider, maybe not Business Insider, but like the CNBC, CNN, all those like those are definitely way harder to get because they are on a national level. Sometimes if there is a something that's like topically like relevant and you can pitch them at the right timing, you might be able to get a segment there. But if you're just starting out, you're like, hey, we want to get a couple TV appearances, get in the momentum, get in the flow. I would look at pitching more like local TV stations. There's some in like San Diego, Las Vegas, all of those. Probably go for like the smaller city. If you try to go pitch like New York, which I think is like picks 11, something like that, or try to go pitch Los Angeles, like those big cities, it's going to be a lot harder to get on those because they have a full calendar. They typically, some of them might actually even charge like a fee. Where like, hey, if you want to come on, it's sponsored, you have to pay this amount. I would really just get your feet in the water first. Go after like this small city. Like if you're in a city, like not that's not close, like a big city, and you're like, hey, I need to get on TV, look what's close to you. Because oftentimes you're gonna find that, okay, there's this local TV station here. They don't have that much content. There's something going on in the industry and like the media that I can talk about because I'm an expert and I could get on that TV show. Most of these like appearances are typically going to be more like a little segment. You're not going to have your full TV show 45 minutes talking about like whatever you want. In my experience, it's going to be a 3, maybe 10 minutes little segment where they're going to be asking you questions about things you're an expert on, whether it's a book that you have coming out. They're going to ask you for like your opinion on a certain topic. But I would say if you're just starting out in like the media world, you've never gone PR, podcast, TV, I probably would start with podcasts and PR. And then once you have like a little foundation doing that, then you can look at TV. Because doing it like in person versus doing it like what we're doing, for example, is much more different. You need to get a little bit of media training before you jump into the Wild West, like doing TV. So I'd build myself up, climb up the ladder before I go into TV. But if you're looking at doing that, I would just look at more like local TV stations. After you got on a couple, that's where it becomes like a little bit easier. Where if you got on like 5 station, then you could go for the bigger city. And it's like a play where you build yourself up, you get on the bigger, the smaller, and then you get to like the bigger like outlets. And as they see that social proof, that credibility, that like, oh, Mark has gone on all these other TV station. Like, yeah, well, let's get him on. He probably had something interesting to say if they had him on the TV station here. So I'd say that's probably my advice when it comes to TV, but it's definitely a good channel.
Yeah, cool, man. Nice. Always good to get out there, start from the smaller guys and work your way up. Awesome, man. And I think one question I just want to ask, right? Because I think a lot of people talk about the successes and everything like that in business, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of challenges, a lot of failures that happen, right, over the years of business. And I think we can learn a bit more
Yeah.
from failure than we can learn
Yeah.
from success. So I'm intrigued to hear like what's one of a big failure that's happened with you. And how did you, I guess,
Yeah.
overcome that and what lessons, were learned from there?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in like the highs and lows, which I'm sure you're familiar with. You're gonna have a very high, and then just crashes. You have like a low. I would say before we start on the podcast side of things, we were doing more like PR. I'm not sure if I would call it a failure, but it was really like a moment where like everything was starting to go down. It was definitely like harder to get new clients. Like the industry felt, I don't want to use that term, but like saturated, where like so many people were doing like PR. There's so many PR firms. And I feel like I felt like a little bit lost. It was like, hey, like what's next? Like where do I go from here? And I recognized that I had like a little bit of market feedback. I was starting to get people saying like, hey, like we want video content. Like if you could get us on podcasts, like that would be great. And then I was like, okay, do I just ditch completely basically like everything we were doing on the PR side of things and then just go full blown into the podcasting side of things? And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And I still remember, like it was like the summer. It's probably like one of like the months I was like the most stressed like ever because I was like making these big major change, like revamping your entire system and doing it for a podcast. And it worked out. But I would say like that month before definitely felt like a major like failure. Like I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do next. And yeah, the heart was beating pretty fast. It's like, hey, like I'm young. I have to figure out what I'm doing. Like, is this like over? Is this where like the train stops, or like where do we go from now? And I would say, like, yeah, if you get to that point, which you will, everyone does, trust me, the train doesn't just go up. At one point, it will go down. And what you have to remember is it will go back up again if you keep pushing. And I feel like a lot of people forget about that. And that's where like the mindset comes like very important. Like you always have to like train yourself, remind yourself of that, which is probably my biggest learning lesson, I would say.
Yeah, awesome, man. Love it. Definitely agree on that. And yeah, if we never stop, we'll always succeed in the end. So you're proof of that, and
Yeah.
great pivoting, right? Like if something's not working or looking at new opportunities, where things are going, right? Like there's a lot out there. And like when
Yeah.
you look at, we're not going to get it on today's podcast, but you look at AI, right? There's a lot of things AI is disrupting. It's like look at those things, going, what is the opportunity from there? Don't go up from a
Hmm.
level of fear, go from a level of opportunity. I think in anything you
Love
do in
that.
business where trends are happening and changing, like how podcasting, right, is, for example, like you said,
Yeah.
is moving up now because of that. So awesome, man. I think yeah, you shared so much gold yeah with us here today. And I guess as we're starting to wrap up here today, what one key piece of advice would you like to give to all the entrepreneurs watching and listening today?
That's a very good one. I would say, and I feel it can be applied in like two scenarios, but I would say don't wait until you do it. Just jump into the deep end and then just like climb your way from there. And I'm seeing like a general business sense, like yes, that can be applied that way. Like just even if you don't know how to do it, jump into it, learn how to do it. And then when it comes more to like the media, podcast, PR, TV aspect of things, I would say like yeah, just start going on them, start producing content, get out there. A lot of us are introverts where you don't want to get on camera. But at one point, you probably will. And a good way to just break the ice is just to do it directly and then get that momentum. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And then you'll look back 2 years later, you're like, yeah, I'm glad I did it. It was definitely worth it. So just jump, do it. Don't try to wait until everything is perfect because it never will be. And I think that's one lesson that a lot of us perfectionists have learned that you can't try to make sure everything is perfect because it never will be in the end. And you'd better just jump into it here.
Definitely, man. Completely agree. And I think the stats are something like people scroll more than the height of the Eiffel Tower every day. So what I also tell people is even if you're starting and you put an
Yeah.
average, let's call it video of what you would like, people are gonna forget about it in a week because they
Oh
there's
yeah.
so much content that there's no one's gonna look at that, right? So just put it out
Yeah.
there and then you'll just get better over time. So I love that. Just make it happen.
Mhm.
Very, very, very cool. And yeah, we connected through our networks, learned about your awesome journey, and yeah, media, press and podcasting. You're an awesome guy, mate. So knowledgeable, and I love that. Yeah, you're helping a lot of people to put themselves out there, and especially on the podcast route, which I think is dear to me as well, and I think is a very,
Mhm.
very powerful medium for people to do that, especially in a world of AI where we want to have authentic conversations, right? So
Yeah.
that's where podcasting plays a big factor now. So putting yourself out there is going to be even more important, I think, over the coming years. And what you're doing is helping a lot of people to do that, which is awesome. And yeah, I'm sure you continue to help individuals, businesses establish themselves as thought leaders through press podcast, TV appearances.
Appreciate
Very grateful that we connected, mate, and look forward to partnering as well. So Zach, how can people find you and get in contact with you?
Easiest way to do it, my username on every platform, it's Zachby. And then if you want to reach out to us, if we can help you, go to wefuture.com. There's going to be a little button called book a call and we can talk then.
Awesome. Well, definitely check him out. Websites, socials, all of that, right? With Zach or Zachary there. And yeah, awesome stuff, right? It's this is where it's at, guys. So make it happen. Get yourselves out there, as what Zach has been talking about today, mate. It's been a pleasure interviewing you. Thanks for being on the Business Growth Show.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Business Growth Show, where we talk about everything on business growth. And please like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram and YouTube is Athin Cassiotis, or visit my website, athincassiotis.com. And if you want to grow and scale your business, you can reach out to me on any platform to see if we're a good fit. So until next time, remember that our business grows where we learn skills and take action using them in spite of fear. So let's create wealth and freedom together.